Looks like we have folks from all over. We have some East Coast friends, some folks from Tennessee, from Texas. We even have a few international guests with us. Very good. Okay. All right. Well, my name is Allison Haley. I am the operations coordinator here at Scholé Academy. I've been with the school for almost 5 years now, and it's a real pleasure to serve families from all over the world who are eager and hungry for classical education, and we are happy to partner with them in that. So I'm going to share my screen here in just a moment and show you where some of our panelists are joining from. So our first panelist this evening is Dr. Nicholas Ganson. He is joining us from Hellenic College Holy Cross University, and they are located in, is it Boston, Massachusetts, Dr. Ganson?
Just outside of Boston. So if I could turn out the lights here right now, you would see the Boston skyline, but it's Brookline, so it's right outside, right outside of Boston, Brookline. Yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. So very far on the East Coast. And then our next panelist is Mr. Zachary Miller from Hillsdale College, so sliding over to Michigan. And we have a panelist that's still joining us, and that's Dr. Maxwell from Taylor University. And then finally, we have Mr. Andrew Ellison, Vice President of Enrollment with the University of Dallas. So our panelists in total are spanning about 1,900 miles, going all the way from Boston across the East Coast and into Texas. And so we have a nice broad perspective to bring you this evening. I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves and tell a little about the school in which they serve and their role there as well. So we'll go first with Dr. Ganson, please.
Hi, welcome everyone, and thanks for having me. Very happy to be here this evening. So as Allison mentioned, I'm at Hellenic College and I'm an associate professor of history here, but I'm also currently serving as the interim dean. And in the spirit of kind of the small community that we have here, I'll tell you right off the bat that if you have any specific questions about Hellenic College, at any later point, feel free to email me. My email is nganson@hchc.edu. So that's nganson@hchc.edu. So I'm happy to hear from anyone with any questions that you might have after tonight's meeting. So let me tell you a little bit about Hellenic College and Hellenic College Holy Cross. I'll kind of explain what that means. So I'm the interim dean of the undergraduate college, which is called Hellenic College, which shares a campus with a school of theology, which is also sometimes referred to as a seminary, which is a graduate school. So I'm a historian, so I'm going to give you a little bit of history. So we originally started out as a seminary, and for a few decades, spanning from 1937 to sometime in the 1950s, we just had the seminary. So we just prepared Orthodox priests for the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, and that was it. And in the 1950s, we began offering bachelor's degrees and became co-ed. And ever since, the campus has essentially two entities that are one community, right? So you have a graduate school, you have an undergraduate school, Hellenic College being undergraduate, Holy Cross being graduate, but it's really one tight-knit and very kind of family-based community. So as I mentioned, we're in the Orthodox Christian tradition, and so most of our students are either come from the Orthodox Christian background or just appreciate kind of Eastern Christianity or interested in Eastern Christianity or inquirers. People who want to learn more about Orthodoxy. In terms of kind of our educational opportunities, I'll probably start by saying a few words about the core curriculum. We call the core curriculum Foundations Forward, and this is a relatively new core curriculum that is founded on two pillars, and those two pillars are Orthodox Christianity, and the second pillar being kind of we could refer to it as Hellenism. So Hellenism broadly conceived. So let me explain a little bit about each of those, and then kind of move on from there. So Orthodoxy is kind of worked into the curriculum through thematic courses that focus on kind of fundamental theological education, as well as what I would call courses in various subject areas that invite students to engage with their faith perspective, or engage with the material through their faith perspective is maybe a better way of putting it. So you might have a history course that covers the ancient world, but as you study the ancient world, you study archaeology, you study the stuff that is the stuff of history, right, upon which we write history. We also we pose existential questions like, why are we here? And being that the students generally come from a strong faith background and a Christian background, their answers are integrate that perspective, but there's still a spectrum. And in our teaching, we do not impose an orthodoxy as such, but we invite students to really develop a mature Christian worldview. One is their own, one is that is authentic for them, right? So that's one of the beautiful things about the new core curriculum we have. That's very robust. It's actually 2 full years. The first 2 years, students are studying in the core. So we take advantage of our location right on the outskirts of Boston. So we have courses like Museums of Boston and Concert Halls of Boston as part of our course. So students get to go to the museums and the various concert venues. We have Boston Symphony. We have New England Conservatory. Lots of places right down the road from us. Lots of resources that we can take advantage of. We have a relative handful of major programs, most of which are really humanities. And I'll give you a complete list, and I'll kind of break it down a little bit. So we have a theology major, classics and Greek studies major, literature and history major, psychology and human development major, a business management major, which is kind of, I'll give you a little inside scoop here, is kind of undergoing a transition toward nonprofit management. So if you're intrigued by that, it's kind of where we're heading. And then finally, liberal studies, which is aimed largely at students who are coming in as transfer students. So we have a lot of students who come in, do community college for a year or two or something along those lines. And liberal studies is very flexible. So you can come in and you kind of have to provide some kind of rationale as to why you're taking the courses that you're taking. And there's also a menu of courses from the core that you still have to take because we like that formation. But it gives you the flexibility to complete out a bachelor's degree, with some meat on the bones, so to speak. Our faculty is small but extremely dedicated. Our class sizes are very small, so you have a very intimate setting, and there's a very authentic community life. We have a chapel at the center of the campus, and that's kind of the gathering place. We have services in the morning and in the evening. It's in some sense it's like one big family because we have the graduate school. We also have a lot of married housing with families, children. So it really does have this kind of this feel of being part of this extended family. Aside from education, we focus a lot on spiritual formation, which in the Orthodox Christian sense, it might be described as the building up of the Christian image from inside. With the goal of the transfiguration of the world, the transfiguration of the world from inside oneself. And I think that's the way that a lot of our students kind of see their formation, see their growth, see their maturation. I'm going to start wrapping up because as a historian and professor, I tend to be a little bit long-winded, and I think I'm probably going longer than I think I am. So I'll just say that, the students who graduate from here, regardless of whether, obviously if they go on to seminary, a lot of them will go on to the priesthood and things like that. But a lot of our Hellenic College graduates, they go out and they become what we refer to as servant leaders. servant leaders in a multitude of capacities in a multitude of professions. A lot of them serve the church directly as youth ministers and youth group leaders and things along those lines. But a lot of them serve in quote regular quote secular settings. I have a recent graduate who's this deeply faithful young man who's married, has 2 kids, and he loves lacrosse, and he's a high school lacrosse coach, and now he's going for his master's in sports management, and that kind of thing. So, but they live out they live out that servant leadership in a multitude of contexts. To give you another example, we have a student graduated a few years ago who went on to get her PhD in theology, and now she teaches at a Catholic college. So that just gives you a little bit of a sampling, and I imagine there might be questions later. So anything I may have forgotten any gaps can probably be filled in later. So again, thank you so much for having me, and I'll stop there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ganson. That was excellent. Yes, please go ahead and make use of the Q&A chat box as we go throughout the evening. We'll gather those questions and address those at the end as we have time, but we welcome your questions as we go throughout the evening, specific to any of the schools or the topics that we will embark on here in just a moment. So thank you, Dr. Ganson. We'll move over to Mr. Miller from Hillsdale College now. We'd love to hear about your work there, please.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Good evening. It's a good honor to be part of this evening and share with you just a little bit more about Hillsdale College. As Allison said, my name is Zach Miller. I'm the Senior Director of Admissions here at Hillsdale. This is my 14th year actually working at the admissions office. I began working right after graduation, intended to stay just for a few years, and 14 years later, here I am right in the same office. So I graduated from Hillsdale in 2011, majored in history and French literature, coach a high school boys basketball team, or at least I did up until this year here at Hillsdale Academy. My wife and I just had our third, a very large 10-pound baby in August. So it was time to give up the coaching and obviously spend more time with family. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about Hillsdale College with you, specifically because of the impact that it's had in my life. And I think we're doing some pretty good work here for the country, but also for individual students as well. So just a little bit of an introduction about Hillsdale. We are located in South Central Michigan. We're a private, independent institution, and we offer a very rigorous liberal arts education that's rooted in both the classical and the Christian traditions. In total, we have about 1,600 undergraduate students on our campus. We have 3 graduate programs as well, 2 of which live here on campus. They're smaller, about 20 to 40 students, so it doesn't take up a large part of our campus, but we do offer programs in classical education, statesmanship, and government at the graduate level. For the 1,600 undergraduate students, though, we draw those students from all 50 states and 14 foreign countries. In fact, only about 20% of our students are from the state of Michigan. So looking through the chat, it's interesting to see the national span that we have here tonight, very similar to what you would find if you came to a visit at Hillsdale College. It's important to know that Hillsdale is a very mission-centric institution. That mission was written in 1844 when we were founded in our Articles of Association. And it starts by saying that we are, quote, grateful to God for the blessings that result from civil and religious liberty, and that we believe that the diffusion of learning is essential to the perpetuity of those blessings. And then it goes on to say that our aim as an institution is to provide students with a literary, a scientific, and a theological education that, with both moral and social instruction, best develops the minds and improves the hearts of its students. So all that we do as an institution is wrapped up in that mission. And Dr. Ganson talked about 2 pillars. I'm going to outdo him a little bit and talk about 4 pillars that we have at Hillsdale. So classical traditions pillars, it all makes sense. But our 4 pillars that stem from that mission are learning, character, faith, and freedom. And those are at the core of what we do and what it means to be a student at Hillsdale. So learning obviously is the core of those as an educational institution. And at Hillsdale, that's most plainly seen in our core curriculum. So roughly half of a student's time on campus at their 4 years are spent in these classes, where together they are studying the timeless events, the ideas, the debates, the discoveries of the Western tradition. And they do so in courses like Rhetoric in the Great Books, the Western and American Heritage, the U.S. Constitution, Introduction to Western Theology, Introduction to Western Philosophy, Mathematics and Deductive Reasoning, Classical Logic and Rhetoric, just naming a few. But then we also have courses as well in the natural sciences, so biology, chemistry, and physics. So it is what I call an aggressive core curriculum. Again, that takes about half of a student's time on campus. And regardless of what they choose to major in, right, they are taking those fundamental classes together to really receive a very deep understanding of the essential things, of our humanity, of God, of the universe, and really the fundamental questions that have existed throughout our time. So we believe that this deep learning in pursuit of true understanding, true wisdom, helps us to live well as human beings. So after the core, then, students do end up choosing a major at Hillsdale. The most popular ones that are pursued are business. We have majors in finance, marketing, and accounting, history, English, economics, and then biology. We actually have an excellent pre-med program with some pretty high placement rates into med school, and our pre-law program has placed students in top 10 law schools. As long as I have been here, we've had a student at one of the top 10. So great programs for those two as well, but the core is really the foundation of that learning piece. Character then is the second, right? So the moral virtue is formed through the development of the intellectual virtues, and we're molded by the learning that I just spoke of. So at Hillsdale, we believe very strongly that it's how we use that knowledge and wisdom that we gain, how we order our souls to make decisions. That piece is just as important as what we learn. And so it forms our character in accordance with the truth. We also believe that our character is formed through challenge and struggle. And so our motto as an institution is Latin phrase, virtus tentamine gaudet. I was not a Latin scholar, so I apologize if I mispronounced that. But what it translates to roughly is strength rejoices in the challenge, right? So we appreciate the growth that comes from doing hard things. That idea of rejoicing in the challenge is in the classroom, but it also extends outside of the classroom as well. We talked about it's part of the mission, the social instruction, right? The living part, the clubs, the organizations, the residence life, the athletics, all those things help to form our character in really important ways. And so students are very involved on campus. It's not what I call a commuter campus or a suitcase campus, because we draw students from all over the country. When they come to Hillsdale, they're there. And we're blessed to be in a great town, but it's a small town, and it doesn't offer a ton of outside attractions, which means the student life happens on campus. So we appreciate that part of the character development and the moral formation of our students. And coupled with that then is the third pillar, right? Faith. We're different than other Christian institutions, even though we were founded by Free Will Baptists and our founding in 1844. We've always been non-sectarian as an institution, so which means we don't affiliate with a certain church or a certain doctrine. That means that students at Hillsdale then, they come from a number of different faith backgrounds. And I think that really elevates the level of conversation between students about their spiritual beliefs. The college's mission is explicit that, we want to teach and maintain by precept and example the immemorial teachings of the Christian faith. But your spiritual walk at Hillsdale being one of the most important parts of your experience that you take part in your 4 years is really something you do alongside students, alongside faculty, alongside staff, both inside and outside of the classroom. And we have a loving, caring, supportive staff, folks who do that each and every day. And then finally, the fourth pillar would be freedom. Freedom is important at Hillsdale College for a couple of reasons. Most people know Hillsdale by the stance that we take, our stance of independence from government regulation. We don't accept any government funding, either at the state or the federal level in order to maintain our independence and to protect our mission as a college as closely as we can. But we also believe that that learning piece is essential to our freedom, right? So what we do with the core curriculum, with the social instruction, the moral instruction, we think that's important to understand what it means to lead a free life and a good life. And so as self-governing, God-fearing individuals, it's important to remember what's in John 8. If you know the truth, then the truth will set you free. And that's an important concept that we hold special at Hillsdale College. So students come from all over the country. They desire to know things deeply. They desire to grow spiritually. They desire to meet lifelong friends and folks who are mentors throughout their life. And Hillsdale tends to be a very special home for them. So we are excited to be able to share more, obviously, if you have questions about what that looks like.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. I did put the link to Hillsdale College in the chat, so feel free to check out their website, and we will be sharing contact information later this evening as well. All right, I'm going to share my screen now, and I want you to all see the map of where we're journeying across. So we started with the introduction from Hellenic College and Holy Cross. We've come over here to Hillsdale, Michigan, in South Central Michigan, as Mr. Miller just mentioned. And then now we're going to take a stop just a little further west in, I believe it's called Upland, Indiana. Is that right, Dr. Maxwell? We're going to hear from Dr. Maxwell from Taylor University next, if you'd like to give your introduction.
Yes, that's great. The locals would call it upland, but most people, I still fall into the upland.
Yeah. Looks like your signal's a little intermittent. All right, we'll give Dr. Maxwell just another moment to regain his signal. It looks like it's cut out.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
All right. So unfortunately, I had trouble with the laptop, and so I'm on my phone, so that could be part of the problem. So I serve as provost, so the chief academic officer here at Taylor. I've been serving here for 3 years. Taylor has a mission that we are developing servant leaders marked with a passion to minister Christ's redemptive love, grace, and truth to a world in need. And I think that is seen throughout the work that is done here at Taylor. I appreciate Mr. Miller and recognizing he went to the 4 pillars, and Taylor has the 7 anchor points. And I won't go through, so I won't explain all of them. I think they are pretty self-evident. So we are whole person focused. We are biblically anchored. We are liberal arts grounded. We're Christ-centered. We're faith learning integrated, world engaging, and servant leader motivated. I would say that the big distinction here, and again, I am newer to Taylor, but what I've really appreciated is Taylor has a real emphasis on discipleship. And we see that across campus, but one of the unique things that you would find here at Taylor is a student culture that I haven't seen elsewhere. Every residence hall each floor has a discipleship assistant. So oftentimes you have resident assistants. We have the resident assistants, but we also have discipleship assistants. Most people who graduate from Taylor, unlike most schools where when you say, I graduated from such and such a school and this was my graduation year, you say what floor you lived on, because you lived on the same floor for 4 years. And it is this idea that upperclassmen are supposed to disciple the underclassmen. Taylor has, much like Mr. Miller said, in terms of Hillsdale in location, we too do not have a lot going on in Upland, Indiana. And so some may have seen us on ESPN because we have the Silent Night tradition with our basketball team. So that's in early December. If you aren't familiar with it, you could do a Google search and find some information there. From an academic side, again, real focus on liberal arts grounding. Our largest majors are, however, business, psychology, education, And then recently we've launched mechanical engineering and nursing, and those are growing programs. Another distinctive, though, that we have is that every student, as part of their foundational core, receives a scripture engagement minor. And so scripture engagement has been something that has really been important to Taylor's history. And so it was about the last 3 years that we instituted this minor for all students. So I'll stop there and happy to take questions later on.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. I don't know what we're going to do with the next panelist. Perhaps we'll have, more than 7 points to excursion through, but it's been fun to hear about each school. So thank you very much. The next panelist is going to take us out of the Midwest and down to Texas at the University of Dallas. So we have Mr. Andrew Ellison is the Vice President of Enrollment. We would like to welcome your introduction at this time.
Thank you. And I'm here to talk about the 37 pillars of the University of Dallas. But I think I can probably summarize and condense it here, so I won't take up the rest of the hour. First of all, Joylyn, Allison, just wanted to say thank you for inviting the University of Dallas to be here. It is an honor that you would think all of us worthy to speak to your community about questions of college, questions of vocation, of higher education, and faith formation. And as I sit here and I listen to these fine gentlemen talk about their institutions, I know that Catholic, Protestants, capital O Orthodox, we are all brothers and sisters in Christ, and that we can affirm joyfully together, shoulder to shoulder, elbow in elbow, what C.S. Lewis called mere Christianity. A Christianity that looks back to our common heritage, looks back to Scripture and to the fathers of the Church, to patristics, and to the ancient Mediterranean together. So here at the University of Dallas, we are located in Irving, Texas, not actually in Dallas, but in Irving, which is right between Dallas and Fort Worth. Irving manages to have the sort of the peaceful, idyllic quality of a small town, and yet we are right here in the heart of one of the largest metropolitan urban areas in the entire United States, with all of the restaurants, museums, culture, politics, internship opportunities, and professional sports franchises that you could possibly want to expose yourself to here. The University of Dallas is a Catholic liberal arts university. Founded in 1956, we are an independent Catholic university, which means we are not under the control of any particular Catholic religious order. We are independent of all religious orders. We are independent of the diocese, which is to say that there is a board of trustees that governs the University of Dallas. It is a board of lay people that happens to have the bishop of the archdiocese, or the Diocese of Dallas, Texas, sitting on our board of trustees, but we are independent. And we're very proud of that independence. And we believe, I think we know, that our independence of any particular structure within the Catholic Church has enabled us to stay true to the vocation of a Catholic university throughout the momentous changes that culture, Western culture, Christian culture, and Catholic culture have seen over the course of the last 50, 60, 70 years. I say we are a liberal arts university. We have, just as I have heard, I've heard from the gentlemen who've spoken before me, an ambitious core curriculum in the liberal arts, but it is also, University of Dallas is a place where after 2 years of rigorous core studies in literature, theology, philosophy, and foreign language, our students major in biology. They major in business. Some of them major in English. Some of them major in the fine arts. You can have both a rigorous Common Core curriculum at the University of Dallas and the opportunity to pursue specialized studies with fantastic scholars outside of that. I joked about 37 pillars. We actually have 4. I've mentioned the core curriculum, which all students take for 2 years. I will add to that, well, I've already mentioned our Catholicism. I will say that there are Catholic religious orders active on campus. We have a Dominican priory right here with Dominican men, Dominican priests, and young novices in formation living on our campus. We have a house of the Nashville Dominican Sisters of Mary, and several of them are actually academically trained members of the teaching faculty at the University of Dallas. Right across the road from us, not too far away from where the old Dallas Cowboys Texas Stadium used to be located, is a monastery of Cistercian monks started by Hungarian refugees from Soviet persecution who fled to this country in the 1950s, settled here in Irving, Texas, built a monastery, and then several of them came over and helped start the University of Dallas back in the 1950s. So we have teaching Cistercian monks on campus as well. Daily Mass is offered every day, multiple times a day. Confessions are available throughout the week. Sunday masses in the Church of the Incarnation here on campus are standing room only. So get here early. And when I say early, I mean at least 15 minutes early. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time finding a seat. The community at the University of Dallas is really strong. We're a small institution. We only have about 1,200 undergraduate students right now. We are a resident campus. Students are required to live on campus for the first 3 years. And when they live off campus in their senior year, nearly all of them live just across the street in some private apartments as well. You can't have a college in the true sense of the word without a place. And the University of Dallas is very much about place and about community. Our campus all empties out, all the buildings, all the pathways cross over a central space in the middle of campus that we call the mall. Every hour when class changes over, basically the whole student body crosses that space together. At any hour, you will see students and faculty, sometimes even the children of faculty, gathered in various forms of conversation, dining, conviviality, music playing games, eating food. It's a wonderful place to be. So our core program, our Catholicism, the sense of community. If I could just say a few other things about community. We love the Catholic community in sort of the tradition of Chaucer's Merry Old England, or the Catholicism of the medieval Italian piazza. Ours is a culture of festivity, of celebration, of music and holidays, and sometimes just good times, sometimes hijinks. We have an annual event called Charity Week, which features lots of crazy costumed behavior and antics involving professors and faculty that are frankly too outrageous for me to describe, which happens every year but raises a large amount of money for a Catholic charity. Last year, we raised over $50,000 for a pro-life cause here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. University of Dallas is also home to the nation's second largest Groundhog Day festival. The first one being, of course, in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. It is important to note that there are no groundhogs in the state of Texas. 0 groundhogs live in Texas. So why do we have Groundhog Day festivities at the University of Dallas? Well, you have to come here and find out why. The last of the 4 pillars I'd like to mention is our Rome program. Lots of people are interested in study abroad. The University of Dallas has basically one main study abroad program, and it really is a core of the core. It's a center of the UD experience. Almost our entire sophomore class participates in the study abroad, the semester-long program in Rome. And we actually own a campus. The University of Dallas owns land and buildings and a vineyard and olive groves right at the foot of the hill where Castel Gandolfo is located. That's the Pope's summer retreat palace. Students and professors and their families, dogs, live together on this campus and study for an entire semester while taking amazing trips to northern Italy, down to Pompeii, over to Greece, around the Mediterranean. That Rome experience, where we actually make our own wine and our own olive oil on that campus, is a centerpiece of the University of Dallas's experience. And I'll close with a quote from the Catholic author, the Englishman Hilaire Belloc, who once said, wherever the Catholic sun doth shine, there's always laughter and good red wine. At least I've always found it so. Benedicamus Domino. I think that sums up our attitude nicely here at the University of Dallas.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Ellison. We appreciate all of the work that you each contribute at the universities where you serve, as well as those that you co-labor with there. And so thank you for being with us this evening. We don't take your time for granted, and we look forward to how you're going to share with us in just a minute. But before we do that, we don't want to leave the great state of Texas without mentioning one other very important guest from Texas. And she's truly not a guest. She's actually our main host, and that's Dr. Joylyn Blake. She's our director here at Scholé Academy. It's a joy to work with her, and she serves our student body well. So Dr. Blake, would you like to say some remarks this evening?
Well, I want to say, first of all, God bless you all. Thank you again for being with us and for tolerating the adventure that is always what it is to join online. Thank you. And Allison, a real special thank you to you, because you are always just at the ready and
We'll wait for just a moment for her signal to catch back up. Dr. Blake's had a power outage this evening, and so we've had quite the adventure behind the scenes of making all of the technology work together so that we can all join remotely this evening. There she goes. You're back.
I'm back. So assuming that my connection will be a little spotty, I am going to continue to rely on Allison and her fabulous hosting capabilities. But I wanted to just issue the first and most important question for all of you gentlemen who both live your faith and work well in a university that is trying to help students do the same. And all of us, we know that college is not necessarily for everyone. But we know that as our students go off to college, we want them to pursue the greatest commandment. And we know that Christ said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So my first question for you, for anyone who would like to chime in, is how does college life actually facilitate or contribute to that opportunity to grow that love? You can, this is an opportunity to speak to college in general, or even if there are particular environments or atmospheres at your university that really contribute to the growing of the love of God and love of neighbor. I invite anyone who would like to chime in first.
I can start us off here, and I'll maybe start by talking a little bit about Hellenic College, and then I'll move on and kind of talk to more in a more general sense, kind of what college can do toward our love of God and love of neighbor. So I think, you know, in the ancient tradition of the Orthodox Church, the sacraments or the sacramental mysteries are at the center of our Christian experience, and certainly that's why the chapel is the center of our community, because that is where we receive the body and blood of Christ. That is where we encounter the sacramental mysteries. So that's the specific kind of to our particular context. But St. John Chrysostom said, if you cannot find Christ in the beggar at the church door, you will not find him in the chalice. And that speaks to kind of our more general experience, I think. And there are two ways of looking at this. We can look at it in a highly formalized way and say, like, oh, we have these programs, you know, we do this, we do that. And but there's just living in community that itself, you know, forces you to really love, to encounter, you know, real people. You know, we're so good as moderns, we are so good at loving people in abstraction, right? But as soon as we see someone face to face and they don't see things the same way, or they don't have the same politics, or they're a little bit different than we are, we feel uncomfortable, or we start, you know, start sometimes I don't want to take it too far, but like wishing them ill, or losing our emotional stability, or things along those lines. So I think just living in community provides us with an opportunity to truly love people in a real way. And for us, I think in the modern world, it's a real challenge because there's so much atomization in the modern world. There's so much isolation in the modern world. We're so connected technologically, right? We're so connected through technology, but we're not really connected. And I think that's true of this generation more than any other generation. Having knowing students of this generation, that's a real challenge. So I think that, specifically Helena College with its small, intimate community, but in general, like living as part of a community forces you to be real in your Christianity, right? To see the image of Christ in your neighbor, and it's unavoidable. If you're going to chapel together in the mornings, and then going to breakfast, and then going to class, and following each other around, seeing the same relative handful of people. If you're really serious about Christianity, you're not going to get upset if somebody steps on your toe, or at least you're going to be challenged not to get upset and to really love that person. And I think that's something that could only happen in community. So those are just a few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very brilliant thoughts to consider. Now, I think I want to toss it maybe to you, Andrew, in terms of your emphasis that people live on the campus and the necessity for it to be a true college experience. It's that intimacy. So maybe you can kind of springboard off of that in terms of love of God, love of neighbor. And then maybe we'll go to Dr. Maxwell with Taylor's kind of a sizable place, at least from what I see on the website. So how does that inform how students can still love God and love others? So first to you, Mr. Ellison.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I think, to put it really simply, the easiest way to pursue your Christian vocation in a college or university is to be sure that you are surrounded by other people who are also pursuing a Christian life and a Christian vocation. And that's the number one most important thing that I would say is that a college where there is a critical mass of students and faculty who are, whatever their discipline, field, geography, ethnic group, or particular tradition, when all are united by that common pursuit, it creates a culture that is all moving in the same direction. It's like a school of fish. Individual ones are darting here and there, but the whole mass is moving in the right direction and moving in the same direction. A great Christian community is one in which there is positive peer pressure, encouragement, nourishment, sustenance given from student to student, from resident assistant in the dorm, from an older student to younger student, from professor to student, from professor to professor. And not every Christian college is like that. Not every Christian college is. Certainly in the Catholic tradition, I would venture to say that most of the Catholic universities in this United States do not fit that description. I am honored to work at a place like the University of Dallas that does fit that description, where the general orientation of faculty and students alike is towards the Christian life, towards prayer, fellowship, saying the rosary together, attending mass together. You will see professors in line with you at confession, waiting to receive the sacrament of reconciliation when you line up there for a week. You will see faculty gathered with students to pray at various events around campus. It is a place where the Catholicism or the Christianity really is everywhere, not just in the chapel. And speaking from my own observation, I was actually a University of Dallas dad before I worked at the University of Dallas. My wife and I had very fervent hopes for our eldest son, that college would be a place, because we knew he was a follower. not a leader. Some people are leaders, some people are followers. We knew our son well enough to know that he was a follower, and that he needed to be in a place where the leaders were those who would lead by their intellectual and moral example, would lead him towards serious studies in pursuit of Christian vocation and serious deepening of the practice of his faith and the service of the church. And that happened here at the University of Dallas for our son. I can name more colleges than all of us together have pillars that claim to be Christian colleges, but where that would not have happened, where the ambient or dominant culture of the student body, the intellectual culture of the faculty, even if the name of the college claims to be Christian or Roman Catholic, where that love was not genuine, that discipleship, that sense of commitment to Christian vocation was not there. Yeah, I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. Going over to you, Dr. Maxwell, and then from you, we'll head to Mr. Miller, because I'm sure you're going to have some interesting perspectives from the student level, now to the faculty perspective, your experience at Hillsdale and how it helped you to love God and love others. So first to you, Dr. Maxwell.
Sure. I would say I really appreciate what Mr. Ellison just said, and I think that we come from a different tradition, just in terms of we are a non-denominational school and really from an evangelical perspective. But I think a lot of what he said, you find commonality, and so that word discipleship, that word intentional community, that is something that has been really critical to Taylor's history. And as Mr. Ellison said, what I would encourage, so those who are on the call tonight, is to really be specific in terms of what you're looking for in a college and university, because I think you do have differences here tonight in terms of traditions, but I think you have 4 universities here who are really solid in what they believe and are true to what they say they believe. So I do think you had mentioned we might be a little bit more sizable. We've just reached over 2,000 students, but we continue to have very small student to faculty ratio, so 14-to-1 ratio. Something that's unique in Taylor's history is going back to the 1980s, there was this philosophy that just as much learning occurs outside of the classroom as inside of the classroom. So most of our student life staff, including our resident directors, have faculty status, because it is this understanding that education is happening everywhere on campus. And again, similar to what Mr. Ellison was saying, we have at Taylor, it's referred to as the Life Together Covenant. And so there is this understanding that we are coming together as a community. We have certain expectations of the community, and how do you make sure that there continues to be that growth and the importance of reconciliation, because we understand that there's going to be differences. So I really do believe that at Taylor, there is that understanding of the pursuit of the intellect. And so we oftentimes think about that in terms of how do you love the Lord with your mind? But then also, as we think about how it permeates throughout campus, that's where you see the heart, the soul, and then strength. I think and again, there might be similarities at other institutions that are represented tonight, but an understanding of that whole person and recognizing that health is critical, and how to young adults understand how to live healthy lifestyles and prepare themselves for adulthood. So that's something that we include in our foundational core.
The point you made about students that learn just as much out of the classroom as inside the classroom. And I think we could all, like when we look back on our college years, we can attest to some of the things that were most formative, like some instructors, some professors, even probably some moments that we found unforgettable in our classroom experience, but probably just as many outside of that, good and bad, potentially. So, Mr. Miller, what are your perspectives on loving God and loving others in the college setting?
Yeah, I echo everything that's been said. I would harp on this idea of community, which I think is extraordinarily important in Christian formation. And we tend to think of and see, and this was my personal experience too, 15 years ago, or longer than that now, this idea of college really as beginning to own your faith, right? Spiritual ownership. I'm sure there's parents on this call, and parents have done the right things to set the foundations of their son or their daughter's spiritual understanding and faith life. And that's excellent. What we want to do at Hillsdale College specifically as a non-sectarian institution where we do have many different beliefs and faith backgrounds, our goal is to take that and to help students understand why they believe what they believe in pursuit of the truth. And so one of the neat things about Hillsdale College is, again, that community of like-minded people who don't see eye to eye on everything, but they ask the right questions and they come at it from a point of love rather than hostility, which we see, I think, unfortunately demonstrated in so many spheres of public life today, which I think can be so damaging. But there's colleges like the ones on this call or this teleconference where students are really trying to understand and own what they believe and why they believe it. And they can do that in a community with students and faculty and staff who are supportive in that. And so when we think about spiritual, formation, we think about ownership of your beliefs. And again, that is just like was just said, that is as much in the classroom as it is outside of the classroom. You're going to learn a lot of things that you're going to start to question and think about more deeply, which is great. But then the conversations in your dorm room, conversations over the dining room. It's one of the coolest things about Hillsdale is we have one dining hall. All students go in. We have 2 hours segmented for all of our meals. And so it's a lot of different conversations that are happening about a lot of different things. But that's a time in your life, those college years, where you can really start to understand that and grab a hold of it.
I love that you have emphasized the importance of community. It seems to be a common theme. And I appreciate what Mr. Ellison said about, being mindful of our own children and leadership versus following and where their tendencies are and what environments to place them in conscientiously. So I'm going to toss it straight back to you, Zach, with another question, and we're right up on the hour, so I want to be sure we do get to the family's Q&A. But I've got one more question because we're talking about investing all of this in our own children and our students' faith formation. What can encourage that? What can encourage their growth in love of God and love of others? But listen, none of us are naive to the fact that college is often a time when students walk away from their faith. We've worked very hard to raise them up in the admonition of the Lord, and then college hits and there's some difficult moments and times. So do you have any thoughts, and this is for everybody, but I'm going to go to Mr. Miller first, about anything that can mitigate this kind of threat of walking away from the faith? Have you seen anything from your vantage point as a student yourself, or now as an academic professional and seeing the history of students and their walk? What insight could you give us on this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we encourage students to do when they come to Hillsdale, and we have parents are a partner in their students' educational pursuit. And so oftentimes when students visit campus as perspectives, or even for those first couple of days that they're on campus, we encourage them to research local churches. We encourage students to join, maybe not as a member, but become an invested layperson in a community church. And Hillsdale is very fortunate to have a number of good churches in walking distance of very different backgrounds. And so those churches are very interested in fostering good community with college students, but our staff and faculty as well are pushing students to join local churches. And the reason for that is, it's important for students to understand the importance of that in their life. And when they leave college, that's going to be one of the first important things that they do. So having a place where they are independent, they are on their own, but there's still a supportive faculty and staff that are helping them connect with those churches. What we found is a lot of students get very involved in those places. They lead youth groups, they lead worship. Sometimes some of our students, I know one that works here in the admissions office, he would love to become a pastor, and he has joined with a local church and has actually taken the pulpit a couple of times which has been neat to see his formation and growth as a young man. So I think having that alongside the community that's actually on campus, something that's outside of the college experience, can be really beneficial to students.
Gentlemen, any other thoughts? What mitigates maybe against walking away from faith, whether it's when they're already there at college or even things that could be done prior to coming to college? Any thoughts from any of you? Yeah, Dr. Ganson.
Yeah, so I think it's really crucial to develop a holistic Christian worldview. Um, you know, again, it kind of to speak a little bit to our modern condition. So often Christianity becomes reduced to an ideology, to a political stance. It becomes reductionistic, and young people are very good at sniffing out hypocrisy. Young people are very good at sniffing out when, people are kind of claiming Christianity, but not really, living Christianity. And this is in my view, but Christianity, and it's so big that it transcends everything else, right? It transcends our whole being. It transcends all of, ideology, politics, and in some sense, this is the way that people in the pre-industrial world tended to view the world. They had a very holistic kind of worldview. Yes, different religious worldviews, but including the Christian worldview, it entailed everything, right? We are so fragmented in the modern world, where, when I say that kind of there's this tendency toward reductionism, and it's so important to have a holistic Christianity, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not judging, but I see it as tragic. I see it as truly tragic. And sometimes we don't realize it, but we fall prey to ideologies, to politics, and we sell those things as if they were Christianity, and they're not. And young people, even if they can't intellectually explain that, they feel it in their hearts. And I think that so often pushes them away. So I feel like the most important thing is really striving to develop in them a holistic Christian worldview, and also serve to try to model that, as parents, as educators, right, as administrators. So God help us do that.
I love that you invite us to consider the speck in our own eye before we try to take it out of someone else's eye, or perhaps the beam in our own eye. So thank you for reminding us that it really does start with us and our own presentation of what is the Christian gospel, what is the Christian worldview. Anyone else have any thoughts you'd like to add about walking away from the faith and mitigation of that?
I'll jump in briefly. It's not entirely answering your question, other than I think it's important to find. So if you're looking for a college or university, to find the right place. And for those who are on the admissions or enrollment side of things, they might not like this advice that I would give to parents and students. I think you go and you visit a college or university on days that they're not expecting visitors to come, and find out what is the spiritual climate on that campus. So yes, you should go to the visit days, and we're having one tonight. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is we have several visitors on campus, and all our admissions staff is there. But I really do believe it's important that before you make a decision, go to that college or university on an off day and see, how do the students really respond to one another? How do the faculty respond to each other? And I think you are going to get a clearer sense, because I do think what we're all saying here, and again, I believe all four institutions here that are represented do a really great job of that from their own traditions. But if you're looking at these institutions or any other, the important part is your son or daughter, this is going to be their formative years. And so I think the best way to try to encourage that growth in terms of their faith is to be in the right place for the additional 4 years. And so choosing the appropriate college or university is so critical.
Jordan, if I could just add a couple really simple things here. When people talk about students losing their faith in college, in my experience, what that usually comes down to is one or both of two things. One is intellectual nihilism, and the other is impurity, right? And when we talk about losing the faith in college, usually we're talking about one or both of those things, right? Where students find that there are temptations and easy access to impurity and committing acts of unchastity and fornication, or the dominant intellectual culture of the school is one of negativity, nihilism, deconstruction, Marxism in some various forms, Foucaultism, queerism, something along those lines, various modern godless ideologies that seek nothing less than the destruction of the Christian life and the Christian faith. So when I offer counsel to families who are looking for a college or a university environment where faith is going to be nourished rather than demonically attacked at every turn, I encourage people to be blunt, as I have just been blunt. Ask blunt questions of an admissions department. And if they get embarrassed, then push harder. And if they won't give you the answer that you're looking for, I think you have all the answer that you need. Look for a place that is unafraid to say, yes, actually, fornicating will get you expelled from this college. Having sex outside of marriage is a major disciplinary offense at this campus. And yes, Christian theologians must teach Christian theology, not teach the undermining of Christian theology in this campus or here at this institution or at this university. So ask blunt questions, and the kind of answers you get will tell you a lot about the character of the Christian institution you're considering.
A fabulous illustration of show, don't tell. I love it. Thank you. And now it's a great segue into, gentlemen, I invite you, if you have other things that you just want to spontaneously be sure that you speak to, be my guest. I'm going to pass it to Allison because she's been dutifully and beautifully curating some Q&A that have come in from our guest. And so, Allison, off to you for asking the Q&A.
All right. Well, we have a few different kind of buckets of questions or types of questions, and so I'll try to cluster those together just for the sake of efficiency, as well as just sort of hitting the spirit of the question. So this first category is thinking of our homeschooling families, and they have questions about readiness and what sorts of tools should they make sure their students are equipped with. So if you want to speak to the tools of the toolbox that you see your students being most successful with, that would be helpful. And also if there are any sorts of programs that your school might offer as far as summer transitioning programs or summer experience type programs, those would fit well in this category as well.
I'd love to start on that, Allison, and say that the University of Dallas, we absolutely love the homeschooling community, and we're seeing the proportion of our student body grow every year that is coming out of a home education background. We had actually, I think it was over 30% of our current freshman class came out of a homeschool background. We have at the University of Dallas now one competitive full tuition scholarship open only to homeschool students, which we certainly hope will drive interest and we hope is a clear affirmation of our appreciation of the great work that goes on in homeschool, home classrooms all across the country. I would say this. There was actually an article that came out in the Atlantic Monthly sometime last month that talked about the real divide in college preparedness or college readiness. It's not the wealth of the school, not how rich the zip code is. It's not whether it's a public school or a private school. It's not even necessarily whether it's a classical school or a non-classical school. The number one divide, the deepening divide between college ready and college unready American high school students is those who know how to read a book and those who don't. Those who have had a high school education in which they were taught to and expected to and required to read long form narratives in their entirety. Those students are well prepared wherever they go to college. Those students who have read excerpts, paragraphs, little bits and pieces of things here and there are not as well prepared for higher education. So the one thing I would say to homeschoolers everywhere is keep on reading. Read complete books. Read long books. And don't believe those who say that the age of the book is dead. Reading a long form work of history, a work of fiction, is one of the best ways to train the mind for higher learning and for college success.
If I could add a quick piece to that, I absolutely agree, Mr. Ellison, on that point. And I would say the same, that the homeschooling families, the homeschooled students that we get on the average are like very, very strong. And a lot of it is because they are real readers and because they have real intellectual curiosity that a lot of other students oftentimes don't have. I would say communication is really important. And I say that from the perspective of an instructor as a professor, because every professor ultimately, or I don't say every professor, but most professors ultimately want you to succeed, right? And oftentimes a professor cannot help you if you don't communicate to them if you're encountering problems, if there's something going on in your life that's maybe preventing you from attending class regularly, or maybe completing assignments in a timely way and things like that. So I think communication is really key, definitely with instructors and really across the board. Now every college university has resources, academic services, academic support resources. Students are sometimes a little bit hesitant or shy to make use of those resources. It's so crucial to actually make use of those resources. You're paying for those resources. Those resources are there. There's the expectation that they're going to be used. So, my advice would be, take advantage of those resources and communicate. If you're ever encountering difficulties, most people ultimately in their core are good people. They're going to help you out. They're not going to, they're not going to let you fail if they can do something about it. So there's just a few more ideas.
Very good. Okay. Any other thoughts on that question before we move on? I did also read that article from The Atlantic. It was very insightful and intriguing. There's so much virtue formation that happens in just reading an entire work, and especially when it's one that you don't particularly like at the beginning, and developing the academic character and rigor to work through something challenging and complete. So thank you for bringing that up. Okay, let's move to another category. This category is what we shall call practical. There are a few questions with parents who are concerned about access to the colleges. I know especially in, I'll try to get it right, Upland, Indiana, as well as Hillsdale College in South Central Michigan, in the more rural areas. Concerns about access through air travel, with shuttles or other sorts of logistical things. So would you like to speak to the ability to help students coming from a great distance to get to the school easily, and families as well, navigating that maybe for the first time?
Sure, I'm happy to start about that.
Okay.
We are an hour and a half away from the major airport in Detroit, so it is a little bit of a distance to get to Hillsdale. But a lot of our students are needing that service. And so we have a shuttle transportation service that daily, multiple times a day, will, based on a schedule, go out, pick up students and bring them back to campus. After the first time students do that, when they meet new students, they meet their friends, a couple things happen. One is they start to carpool to the airport, or they find friends who live next to an airport and they catch rides with them. Or for smaller breaks like Thanksgiving, sometimes Easter, they'll go to those students' houses for dinner. And one of the things that we intentionally try to do at Hillsdale in our roommate pairing is we try to match up roommates, one who's from far away and one who's from in driving distance. And so the hope is that they become fast friends and they'd have a place to go over those breaks. So yes, it's being from far away, I know, is a concern for a lot of families. A lot of our students take the time to travel, and we have the resources to make sure that they're set up for that. But I think the friendships that they maintain are really the real answer to that.
Yeah, very good. Dr.
Our
Maxwell.
experience here at Taylor is fairly similar. We're about an hour and a half from Indianapolis Airport. We are 40 to 45 minutes from Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne simply does not have as many flights, but it depends on the city too. So we have everyday straight flights to Dallas, Atlanta, Charlotte, Minneapolis out of Fort Wayne, Chicago. So we hit a lot of the big cities around the country. But I think Mr. Miller said it exactly right. It's typically that first time you come, and that's the last time that you have any kind of concern, because students really do coalesce with one another. There's also been kind of an interesting thing as Taylor, and some of the panelists mentioned this, is whether you have representation of all 50 states or roughly high 30s or low 40s. That's basically what Taylor typically has, somewhere around 40 states represented. Recently, we've seen, and they've done it out of, again, kind of that student culture type thing where students from Tennessee and students from Kentucky will get together for major sporting events and kind of more of that competitive spirit. And so, again, they've kind of coalesced into these groups of students who live close to them. And you do find, as Mr. Miller said, a lot of times you'll hear students who are going to Thanksgiving or Easter or something like that 10 to 15 students are all packing into one house. So it's been a great culture builder, I guess I would say, on our campus.
I just have to brag a little bit on the transportation, the accessibility question. The University of Dallas is basically equidistant between Dallas Love Field Airport, which is the home port, the home base of Southwest Airlines, and DFW, Dallas Fort Worth, which is one of the largest, busiest airports in the entire country. So come on out and see us. If you miss your flight, there'll be another one in 15 minutes.
Very well played. Very well played. Okay. Our next category is going to be sort of outcome focused. So if you have any statistics about maybe a distribution of types of majors at your school that you'd like to speak to, or if you'd like to speak to mentorship and internship type placement programs that your school might have, this would be a great opportunity to do that. So we have a few questions from parents asking about outcomes. If we're looking at liberal arts degrees from liberal arts colleges, what are the scope of programs that you're offering? So
I'd love to start, Allison.
Okay.
So basically our top 3 undergraduate majors at UD they trade places 1, 2, and 3. They just sort of, leapfrog over each other from year to year. Business, biology, and English. Okay, right? The very practical world of finance, of wealth, of commerce, the theoretical and practical world of the natural sciences, research, and medicine, and then the humanistic world, the humane world of pursuing letters, of literature, of studying the human person through works of narrative, through works of poetry. The fact that those 3 majors are basically equally powerfully attractive at the University of Dallas, I think says a lot about the versatility of a Catholic liberal arts education. That the core program is the same for everybody, but it prepares students well for and complements engagement in practical affairs of commerce and law, engaging in research, medicine, and possibly engaging in learned professions, scholarship, teaching along the lines as well. So I think we like to think of ourselves at the University of Dallas as really having the best of both worlds. You all know it's Scholé Academy. What does the Greek word Scholé mean? It means leisure, right? It means what you're doing when you're not concerned with making a living. And I think there's no better word to describe what liberal education is, studying philosophy and literature and history for their own sake than leisure. And yet, at the University of Dallas, that goes hand in hand with preparation for success in business, in technical careers, in learned careers. We have extremely high medical school placement rates, very, very high law school placement rates, and tremendous success in a variety of different professions. I think someone put a question in the chat about, what do you do with a classics degree? A lot of students at UD do study the Greek and Latin classics. I met an alum at an Oktoberfest event over the weekend who was a Greek and Latin major at UD. She's now a medical doctor specializing in kidney and urology. So what a fascinating conjunction, right, of what we would call classical studies and then preparation for a medical career afterwards.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I'm happy to piggyback off that. The Liberal Arts Foundation is really one of the best, even practical preparations for a number of careers, if not all of them. You learn how to think well. You learn how to read well. You learn how to communicate and write well. One of the things that we hear from employers who continue to come back and seek to hire Hillsdale grads is not only are they good people, but they can communicate effectively. And that's something that's practiced in the classroom each and every day, especially in the core curriculum with small class sizes where professors are engaged with students. So even we have a student who was a friend of one of our admissions counselors. He went to the University of California at Davis after pursuing a physics degree at Hillsdale. And he pursued an engineering degree. And one of the things that all of his professors talked about that stood out in his application was, you had the best writing of anybody we've seen in a very long time, right? A physics major from Hillsdale College with the Liberal Arts Foundation. He stood out because of that ability. So the liberal arts core, the foundation, really does prepare students for a number of different things, as Mr. Ellison said. And we've been fortunate because we have students from all over the country. We have an alumni base that's all over the country. And we have kind of a national leadership audience of folks who love Hillsdale College and want to hire students, want to help students. So our career service office travels nationally, they recruit nationally, different employers. And so when students walk into career services, even as a freshman, not only are we helping them gain the practical things they need to do to be employable, either long-term or for an internship in the short term, but they're connecting with these folks. And so there's opportunities for them all over the country. And a lot of our students, they want to go back home and commit themselves to the community they grew up in. And usually there's opportunities for them there in something they're interested in pursuing. So liberal arts is the biggest part of that, though, I think.
What about you, Dr. Ganson? I'm so curious about at Hellenic Holy Cross, what are the common majors and then what do students go on to do?
Yeah, so I went, during my intro, I went through the majors, but I think that, the trend that we're seeing is we're seeing more and more students going on to graduate school. And I think that's because of the rigor that they're getting in the core curriculum, and also because of the fact that we have, intelligent, thoughtful, intellectually curious students who don't necessarily measure their success based on a money figure. They want to do things, they want to go on and do things that are fulfilling. So they're going from undergrad to grad school in a variety of fields, a lot of them in education. Interestingly, somebody asked the question about our classic students. A lot of our classic students are going to education, both elementary education, secondary education. They, like I said at the beginning, Christ is at the center for them, and they really are true servant leaders. And, they measure their success based on their fulfillment as Christians. And, but it's kind of a trend. We're seeing more and more, students moving on to grad school and succeeding, getting advanced degrees.
Right. Well, we're approaching the half-hour mark, which is where we do intend to kind of wrap things up. Dr. Maxwell, I didn't want to cut you off, though, if you wanted to highlight some popular majors at Taylor, and maybe you did that when I was very spotty on my internet.
Sure. The big ones are business, psychology, education. Those have been the ones historically, but we are seeing more and more families that want that strong liberal arts foundation, but then are, and especially I think families that would be represented on this call that either come from a homeschooling background or a classical background, and they're looking for, well, how can I use that as a foundation for some higher level professional programs? And so that's where engineering has been one of our fastest growing majors. We just launched nursing this year, so that's a growing major. Our pre-med program, so we do have a pre-med advisor who came on board. He used to work at one of the local medical schools, and since he's been on board, so this goes back to, I believe, 2017, only one student. So we're at over 99% of students who do the pre-med program get into med school, and the national average is around 35%. So I agree. Again, I think that we are so well represented on this call of that liberal arts foundation is so critical, and just highly encourage you, whether it's one of these institutions or another institution that makes sense for your son or daughter, make sure that they're getting that solid classical background.
So true, and thank you for that. We at Scholé Academy love to be a part of that solid classical background that students are being offered. And, we kind of started this call and the whole intention behind it being remaining faithful, following faithfully, growing in one's faith while in college. And I was recently rereading Deuteronomy, and what was really standing out to me through that whole process is, there is no special life hack outside of the will and ways of God. And you follow the will and ways of God, and things go well with you. It's not a guaranteed for material blessing, but that is the richness, and those are the footsteps that we all want our students to walk in and follow in. And he takes care of the practicals when we keep the main thing, when we seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. All these things are added. So I appreciate so much your emphasis on this truth in our students' lives and in your respective institutions. I'm really grateful, gentlemen. I know you have a lot of things going on, both in your personal lives and in your institutions' lives. So it's been very, very rich to have you with us. And again, I want to say a big thank you to Allison for her fabulous stepping in. And, at the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott became the main quarterback because he stepped in when needed. So I'm just saying, Allison, you've been a wonderful step in, and you've done a fabulous job, and thank you so much. And I will just put a final plug in for Scholé Academy. More courses, the better, in terms of enriching your students' ability to think deeply, reason well, dialogue, and communicate, and seek after the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, and strength. Our spring courses are live, so you can go on our website and check out those spring courses and try some things out. Allison, I want to give the final word to you. If you have anything that you want to say or point people to, I know we couldn't quite make it to all the Q&A, but any final words from you?
Just a thank you to our panelists. They bring a lot of wisdom and experience with them, and so it was good to have such a diverse background. And I think a grouping that really represents the work of Scholé Academy as well, and our welcoming of the three historic Christian traditions. And so, thank you for what they bring and the work that they're doing at the schools where they're serving.
And families, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your valuable questions and your time this evening. We really do appreciate it. And we wish you many blessings as you continue to pursue things. Be on the lookout for our next live learning event, which will happen next month when Dr. Christopher Perrin will speak on what do we do when a child walks away from the faith. So we welcome you to join us for that event. Thank you again, gentlemen, so much. Have a lovely evening. We appreciate all of you. God bless.
Thank you.